Hi everybody, welcome back to the Chromeworks studio in beautiful Ottawa, Canada. I'm Andrew Tomec, your technology teacher, and I'm here today to do something a little different with you. Instead of making a Scratch game, we're going to learn a little bit about Scratch graphics. A lot of you guys are back in school right now and you're going to be working on school projects, and Scratch is a fantastic way to show what you've learned by telling little stories or by presenting information. You could have little projects where you click a button and information pops up about whatever it is that you're trying to learn in class. So it's a wonderful tool for that, and I'm going to be doing more this year, showing you guys how to use Scratch in school to show what you've learned. For starters, though, we need to know how to get new graphics into Scratch. The sprites that are contained in Scratch are very thorough. There's hundreds of them that are really useful, but every once in a while you're going to be doing a project where you don't have something that quite works the way that you want it to. So I'm going to teach you how to modify graphics in Scratch to create new costumes that will work better for the way that you want them to. And I'm also going to teach you how to bring in resources from outside of Scratch that you can use to create brand new costumes with different poses that you can use to tell your little stories. So let's get to it. Let's go have a look at Scratch first, because there's some interesting stuff I want to show you there. So I've called up a knight sprite here in Scratch, and that's a typical example of the kind of stuff you want to use in a project. Let's say you're doing a project on medieval history. You might want to have the knight talking to the king about his responsibilities, for example. But this knight guy, by default, only has one costume. When you call him up, he looks like this. How do we create new costumes for him? Well, Scratch has kind of anticipated this. The developers at MIT have designed these characters in such a way that you can repose them pretty easily. If I start ripping this guy apart, you can see he's been cut into a certain number of components. We've got, 7 different pieces that he's cut into here. You can't really take him apart much more beyond that. If I ungroup this character here, you'll see that I can't take his armor apart into smaller pieces. I can just get the background and I can get the ink around the entire object. So that's not something that's going to work. Let me just regroup that again so that I can use it again later. Okay, so actually I'm going to undo this and get back to my original knight again. So by moving these little pieces around, we can create brand new costumes. For example, let's start by making a copy of our knight. I'm going to right click on it and go duplicate. Remember, if you're duplicating on a Chromebook, there's no actual right clicker, so you have to hold 2 fingers down on the keypad like that and aim at what you're going to duplicate and press like that, and you'll get a little duplicate menu just like that. So now we have a new costume that we can mess with. I'm going to grab the sword and the arm, and I'm going to group them together so I can move them both at once. Now every time I click on them, I'm actually clicking on both of them at once. So now I can grab this little handle down at the bottom that's shaped a little bit like the bottom of a circle, and I can use that to rotate my object around, just like this. Now that's way out of whack again, so I'm just going to grab it now and move it back towards here, just like that. And now we have a nice little costume of him moving his arms. We can do the same thing with his legs. Let's try duplicating him. And we'll just spin his legs around a little bit, like that. And I'll spin this one like this. And now we've got a different pose for our knight. He's kind of leaning backwards here, so I'm going to grab everything by drawing a loop around it. Everything except for the leg at the bottom there. Let's try that again. There we go. And I'm going to rotate that to make him a little more upright. There you can see, now we created 3 different costumes for him. 2 swinging his arms so that we can code, and another one with him standing up straight. And we can name each one of these, and then we can, in our code, have it go between them. So I'm going to say standing straight, for example, right here in the code at the top. And I can give the other costumes names as well. And I can keep making costumes all day long to make them do anything I want to. Okay, how about bringing in other characters that are not from Scratch? So in a minute, we're going to go to a Clipart website and grab some graphics from there. Before I do that, though, I probably should talk to you a little bit about copyright. There are lots of images on the internet, millions and millions of them, and not all of them are free to grab and use in your own projects. Artists work hard on this stuff, and in some cases, they work for very little money to produce this stuff that's sold to clients for corporate purposes and stuff. So they haven't put this stuff on the internet for you to steal from them. So there's debates about how ethical that is, but we don't need to get into that, because the whole point is that there's lots of free stuff out there, especially if you're doing stuff for school. I really think it's wise for you to stay above the board and make sure that everything that you grab is legally available to you. The good news is there's lots of websites that do that for you. They gather images together that already have the copyrights and stuff dealt with, so that you don't have to worry about it. One of the websites that we're going to go to right now is called freepik.com, and I really like it a lot. Let me show you that one right now. So this is Freepik. One of the things I like a lot about it is it advertises itself as a free source for images. As you can see here, it has a little filter list here that lets you cut out your filter out your search so that you're looking for very specific things. I want to look only for vectors, which is images that are drawn in Illustrator, which look a lot like the graphics that we have in Scratch. And I'm also going to click on in the filters list on the word free here. And that will filter our list so that we're only looking at stuff that we're actually legally available to look for. Okay, I'm still on a kick for knights here, because we're working on medieval projects today, apparently. I'm going to type the word knight into the search engine, and I've got a whole bunch of graphics here that I can use for different stuff. Any one of these you can grab and use for your own materials. Some nice kids here. Let's grab one of these guys and see what we can do with him. So I'm going to download this image. I'm going to click on the download button. Make sure to, so it's asking you if you want to pay for it. We're just going to say free download, and it says attribution required, and all that means is you should put something in the credits for your Scratch file saying that you got this from freepik.com. I'm going to go ahead and download it to a folder here, drag in, there we go. Now I can go over to Scratch theoretically and open it up there, but I've got 5 different characters in here rather than one, and I'm going to want to actually nail this down and get it into a single image before I bring it into Scratch. You could edit this all in the Scratch editor, but I don't think that's actually the best solution, because Scratch isn't very flexible at doing some of the stuff that we want to do. So we're going to bring it into an actual image editing program. A lot of you guys don't have Photoshop at home. That's my preferred tool. But we're going to be using a tool called Pixlr today, which is a free image editor that does a whole lot of what Photoshop does. It's over at pixlr.com. I can show it to you right here. So this is what the website looks like when you first call it up. You'll be seeing an image something like this. Click on Pixlr E, which is the version that looks a lot more like Photoshop. You can try the other version out if you like, but I like this one a lot. Now we're going to go Open Image, and we're going to go ahead and find the image that I have here. This is a zipped document, so I'm going to have to unzip it first. I already have a program for unzipping. Windows and Mac computers both, I believe, have the ability to unzip things. I'm going to open up this JPEG version of the image here. Okay, so Pixlr is asking us here what size we want to be. It's going to resize the image to fill what it thinks we're going to need, whether we want an Ultra HD image or a web-sized image. I'm just going to grab the middle one. I don't want to expand the image bigger than it actually already is, because that's not really helping anything. We're just creating 2 pixels where there used to be 1, but it's not giving you any additional information. Cropping it too small, though, will make it more pixelated and a little bit harder to work with. So while we're editing it, we want it in nice, clear, full HD, and then later on, we'll be able to shrink it later. And if it when we don't need to worry about where the edges are, we can let Pixlr shrink it in a little bit better manner. But right now, while we're working on an image, we want all those pixels to be able to work on. Okay, so first we're going to try and get rid of the background. If you're lucky, you'll pull up an image that doesn't have a background, but in this case, this one has a white background, which is going to cause all kinds of problems for us when we try to edit it inside Scratch. So let's get rid of the background right now. There's a couple of ways to do that. The first thing we should do, though, is unlock the background. By default, if you load up an image, the background is locked. You can tell by this little padlock image over here. And you can tell that we can't properly delete it when it's locked to the background. If I grab an eraser tool here, for example, and try to erase across it, it basically looks like nothing happens. If I erase across the king, you can see it erases to white, which is not what we want. We want it to erase to a checkerboard. And the reason that's happening is because it's locked to the background. It's like this guy's glued onto a white piece of paper. So we have to lift him up off of the paper first so that we can cut through and get actual transparency. So we're going to unlock him. We can unlock by double-clicking on this padlock here, or right at the top of the screen when you load up the file. It's disappeared now. There's a button here normally that gives you the ability to unlock. Here it is. It says when we go to the Move tool, you see a command here that says Unlock. So we're going to unlock the object, and now you can see the padlock has disappeared now, and now when I grab an eraser, you can see that we see that transparency behind that checkerboard pattern. A little darker than it is in Scratch, but there's definitely a checkerboard there. Okay, now I'm going to use my magic wand, which is this tool right over here. The magic wand will select a color wherever you click, and then it'll start looking adjacent to it for more of the same color objects. So it'll create a selection based on the uniformity of the colors here. So on a Clipart image here where all the colors are the same, it's very easy to just click with the magic wand tool and it will pick all the stuff that's white. The problem though is if you look a little closer, I'm going to zoom in here on the soldier on the left, the knight. You can see that there are parts of him inside his body that have been selected too. It's picked things that are kind of white, not things that are white. You can see what happens when I hit the delete button to get rid of the background here. I'm actually going to delete a big part of my knight as well. That's a no-no. So we have to tell it to try and select a little bit more selectively to find stuff that's only pure white. The way to do that is to go up to this tolerance button up top here. It lets you enter a number. The tolerance is basically how far away from white you're allowed to get. I'm going to drag this all the way to the left for 0 because I know that because this is an illustration, there's not going to be stuff here that's kind of white. It's all going to be pure white. So that should solve a lot of problems for us. So now let me unzoom the program in here as well. There we go. Now, before I select again, if I try to use my magic wand in here, it's not going to work. It's turned into a move tool that lets you move the selection around. That's really frustrating. We have to get rid of this selection before we make a new selection. To do that, we go into our select menu up at the top here, and there's an option that says deselect. You can also go Control D, and that will get rid of that selection. And now we can click with our magic wand again with the tolerance at 0, and you can see it will only pick up the background and it will not grab anything else. It's not perfect. You can see there's a little bit of a white fringe around these guys, but we can learn to live with that. In Photoshop, you'd be able to go in and take that selection and shrink it by 1 pixel and then delete it, and then you can get rid of that white fringe. And Photoshop would probably do a job of finding the edge areas as well. But we'll live with that white fringe for now. It's not really going to affect things too much. So I want to get this knight character and put him into his own file now. So I'm just going to grab one of these square marquee tools here, draw a square around my object, and then I'm going to copy him. I'll go up to the edit menu, I'll go copy, and then I'm going to paste it into a new document. So let's go new image. I'll just pick a small web image because I think it will fit in there. I'll click on over on the right hand side here. It allows you to pick the size. I'm just going to click create here. And There's my new document, and if I paste, I'll just go Control V to paste in here. Or there's my guy. He's a little bit too big for the space, but now that he's already cut up, I know I don't want him any bigger, so let's just resize him. I'm going to go to my Edit menu here, and I'm going to click the Free Transform button. That will put handles on my character, and now I can squash him down in size. Now remember, when you're squashing stuff, that you can do it way out of proportion, and that's not good at all. I'm just going to let go and undo to get him back to, I have to go back to my history palette. I'll cancel this. There we go. Now I'll go, yeah, let's, no. All right, there we go. So now this time when I'm shrinking it, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and that will make it so, oh, in Photoshop that works. Here it doesn't, eh? So the way to shrink inside Pixlr here without distorting the images, you don't grab it by the handles. You just click on it, and instead of grabbing it by the handles, I clicked the handle and then I slid my mouse down a little bit so that I wasn't touching the handle anymore. And now you can see as I resize it, it no longer lets me distort the image. This way I can be absolutely sure that I haven't crunched it at all. Let's get it to a proper size and move it back to the middle here. That's looking really good now. Okay, so we need to apply this change. So I think if I just hit Enter, that will apply it. Do I double click? Click elsewhere. Okay, clicking elsewhere outside of the object will actually select that and commit the change. Okay, so we're good to go now. There's an extra layer here I've noticed. I'm just going to delete that. I'm just going to click on it and click the trash can button to get rid of it. That was the default layer that was there when I first started. Okay. So now I want to take this arm. What I'm going to do is take both arms and the legs and the head and save each of them into a different file. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I am going to grab the arm. Now let's zoom in on it first. We're going to go over to our navigate window in the top here. I'm going to drag this slider over so that I can get a little closer to the edge of his arm. You can see as I start to shrink it, this little red circle gets smaller. That red circle shows all of the image that you can see at this moment. So I'll center that on the end of his arm, and you can see when we pull out here that we've just got his arm nicely selected here. So if I was motivated, I could go through here now and clean up this the edges of this character a little bit with an eraser tool. That would take a long time though, and I'm probably not going to bother. But if you were feeling ambitious, I would grab a slightly smaller eraser by clicking the little brush button at the top here. You can see a little menu appears that lets you pick the size of your eraser brush and the hardness of it. And then you can just go along here and get rid of some of this white fringing if you wanted to. Or there's different ways you could do it. I could grab one of these lasso tools as well, and again draw along the edges, and then delete the stuff that I've selected. There's other methods for doing this as well, but we're not going to look at them today. Okay, so what I want to do is cut this arm into its own piece. So what I'm going to do here is I'll zoom right into the edge of the arm here. I'm going to use a lasso tool, but the lasso tool is really hard to control. If your mouse moves around while you're snipping, you end up getting not a straight line, or you can end up hacking pieces off of your thing accidentally. There's a variation on this lasso tool that works much, much better. It's called the polygonal lasso tool, and the way it works is it will let you click your mouse pointer someplace close to where you want to start cutting, and it creates a line basically with a selection in it. So I can hold this line until it perfectly matches the edge of the object I want to copy or cut here, and then click. And I can keep adjusting it until I know I'm exactly in the spot I want it to be. And if I click carefully, I can get a much more controlled and straight line to cut in here. Okay, beautiful. I have to keep going around the rest of the object here. I'm going to use my mouse wheel to scroll out of it here so I can get around the sword as well. If you don't have access to that, I believe you can do it by, yeah, you can click the plus or minus button here even while you're selecting stuff. So I'm going to draw around the entire sword. Once I feel like I'm close enough, I can just double click to finish closing that off. Okay, so now I've got the arm selected as its own object. I am going to now cut it or copy it. So let's go edit, copy. Actually, I'm going to cut it to get rid of it here because I don't want the original image anymore. So I'll go cut. It'll snip it right out of there. And that'll make it easier to grab the body again later. Okay, let's paste that into a new object. We'll go File, New Image, Web Small, Create. There we go. And I'll just paste here. Control V. There's my arm. Now, when I move the arm around and it's behind my other object, these little seams might show up. So what I actually want to do here is add a little bit to his arm. I'm going to turn him into a little bit of a doll shape here. You know how the old G.I. Joe dolls and stuff had a ball and socket joint at the end of them. We're going to create something kind of like that at the end of our object here. So let's get up nice and close to the end of our sword arm here. Just drag that slider over nice and close, and then I'll move that little red circle towards the end, just like this. Maybe unzoom just a bit here. Okay, good. So I want to be coloring with white here. So if you're not sure of the color you're going to be coloring with, you can use the little eyedropper tool, which is, where is the eyedropper tool? Oh, here it is, right down here towards the bottom. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on this white. It's going to take that color and make it my active color now. So now if I try to paint or do anything along those lines, it will actually fill it up with that color. So there's different ways to do this. I can just grab a pencil tool here and draw with it this way. I'm drawing very small, so there's not much to it. I actually want to draw all the way around here with both these colors. So I could draw it like that, or I could select something with the polygonal lasso tool. Let me do the other part like that. I'll just select this with a polygonal lasso tool. Now that we've got that area selected, I'm going to grab that color with my eyedropper tool, the gray color, and I'll just fill it up with the paint bucket, which is this tool right here. I'll click inside here, and that will fill it up. It's not quite perfect there, so I'll just finish it up with a pencil. It's weird that I can't see the actual tip of the pencil brush here. I'm not sure if it's because it's too big or what the scoop is. Okay, so now I've got an arm end that's a little bit longer. So if part of it's sneaking out from the other part, it will be a little less obvious. We're just trying to lengthen the arm a little bit so that there's not a gap when we move the arms around. Okay, we're good now. Let's zoom back out again and have a look at our arm. Maybe I could add a little bit more to the edge of it. I'm going to try a paintbrush this time. We can go a little smaller with the paintbrush, so I'm going to grab a smaller brush, maybe a hard brush, one that doesn't have soft edges, to give me a little more control over what I'm painting. I'll click again with white here, and then I'll paint with my paintbrush. Beautiful. And maybe a little bit smaller for the next one, a size of 20 or something. And let's grab that gray color with our eyedropper, and I will paint again. Now it's not quite what I wanted, so I'm just going to use a polygonal lasso tool to just draw a little curve around the edges here. And I'll get rid of the part of his arm that I don't want here. Okay, beautiful. So now I've got the arm set up the way that I like it. We can go ahead and save it now. So let me go File, Save, and I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it Knight Left Arm, and we'll download that one, save it into a folder where we can find it again. There we go. And now let's go back. So I still have the other file open here. It's the original file here on the left. You can see the files that I have open here. This one's just the knight, and this one's all my characters. So I want to go back to my knight. let's grab the second arm now, and we'll do the same thing to it, but we'll just try it much more quickly. So let's grab the polygonal lasso tool. Let's do it one more time here. So again, I'm going to click, click, click along here. There we go. Now I'll cut. And now we'll create a new document for the right arm. It actually technically is left arm, I guess, but I'm going to call it right because it makes sense to me that it's at the right of the image. Okay, paste. So I've got my right arm here. I want to extend it the same way again so that we can move it around without exposing these empty areas here. Let me show you a slightly different way of doing it. So I'm going to grab the marquee tool, which grabs a square area inside my object. I'm just going to drag it inside a sliver inside this character here like this. So that's picked up a piece of his arm. I'm going to copy that and I'll paste it. So now I have a new piece of arm right here. I can move it around using this arrow tool here and resize it as well. So before I was showing you how when you tried to resize things, it would accidentally stretch them out. There is an actual control for that I found here. I didn't realize. When you click on this arrow tool, you can choose fixed or free aspect ratio. So if I'm on a fixed aspect ratio, no matter what I do, I won't be able to squash it. I can make it bigger or smaller, but I won't be able to actually stretch it. So when the aspect ratio is free, now I'm able to stretch it any way I want to. And I'm actually going to take advantage of that feature here by stretching out his arm here and making it a little bit longer. So I'm going to rotate this so that it's kind of matched up with the way that things are here. I'm going to fix it later. And then with the free aspect ratio, I'm going to stretch it out a little bit like this and try to align it with what's there already by squishing it and stretching it until it looks pretty good. Maybe close to that. There we go. So now we've got his arm a little bit longer, which will give us a little more flexibility to do stuff. I want to get rid of this part here. So the first thing I want to do is turn both these versions of the image into the same image. Let's go to our layer menu and we'll just go merge visible. And that will take all these different pieces, the new part I created and the other part with the main part of the image, and it'll make it all into one image. So we'll go layer, merge visible. Now it's all one image. Now I can subtract from that by deleting a little bit. So I'm going to go to my lasso tool, pick my polygonal lasso, and then just like this. Then I'll hit the delete key. There we go. So this looks really good. My arm's extra long right now so that no matter what I do with it, it's still going to stay behind his shoulder and there won't be any gaps visible when I'm moving his arm around. Let's save this again now. All right, so we're going to do the same thing for the two legs and also for his head as well so that we end up with 6 body parts that we can play around with. So this is going to get a little bit repetitive here, so I'm just going to speed up the film while I whip through this a little bit more quickly. So hang on to your hats, guys. You can see that our knight head here doesn't need any modifications. It's already basically ready to go. So let's just save it. And the knight's body should be the only part that's left here. So let's go back to it once we're done saving here. There we go, and we'll just do a save in here. Save, and Okay, so we've got all of our knight body parts ready to go. So let's get back to Scratch and try to import these objects. So here we are. There's my Scratch window. We're going to create a new sprite here. So I'm going to go down to the right-hand menu. Sorry, my body's covering it up. I'm just going to go upload a sprite. Let's zoom so you can see it. I'm going to go upload a sprite. It's asking me to find my object. I've already got the right folder selected here. So let's grab these guys. We'll start with the head. I'll open it up. So go back to the costume now. So now I've got the costume for this guy's head. Let's place it up near the beginning. We want to, let's undo. I did something by accident. So we want this to be in vector mode. If we try to attach these things in bitmap mode, we won't be able to manipulate the pieces anymore. We want each piece to be its own separate object. And if we do it in bitmap mode, they'll all be glued together in such a way that we're going to be right back where we started again. So let's go convert to vector each time. So now I've got a head here. This is going to be way too big. So we're probably going to want to resize all these parts. We're going to have to do it by judgment. So let me just try and figure out around what I want this guy's size to be. That's looking pretty good. All right, now we don't want to create a new sprite for the next body part. We want it to be in the same character. We can't load it into this costume though. So let's just load up a new costume. We'll go down the left-hand menu here. We'll go upload costume. We'll grab this body. Here it is in its own costume. Let's convert to vector mode. Now we have an object we can drag around. Let's copy that and paste it back into the head. So I'll just go paste. There we go. Now we have the head here that we're going to want to put behind here. So the stacking order is going to be important for these things. Let's make sure that that this body is at the back and the head is at the front. So I'm going to click on the go to back button. There we go. Now my body's looking pretty good. I'm gonna have to resize it a little bit though, of course. That's why it's not quite fitting. There we go. That's looking pretty good now. All right, let's go grab the arms and legs as well. So load, right arm, convert to vector, select it, copy, back to the knight, paste, resize a little bit. See, I think I probably should have resized this when I was in Pixlr, and then I would avoid this problem. So remember, my arm is too long, so I can inset it a little bit. Again, we'll move it to the back. Let's zoom our image here a little bit. And you can see that we can rotate this any way we want to, and it will still look very much like a connected arm. Okay, let's go ahead and grab the next one. We only got a few more things to do. Left arm. Let's zoom through this really quickly as well, now that you guys know what to do. All right, so it's looking pretty good now. I've got my knight reassembled. He really doesn't look any different from the way he looked in the original image. Let's just get this other knight out of the way, and you can see that he's a proper Scratch character that we can move around our landscape. Let's get a little bit more of an interesting medieval kind of landscape going here. I know there's some castles here somewhere. I don't. It must be under C for castle, of course. So let's go to grab this one. Oh, there we go. There's a proper medieval background for this guy. Let's go. So we don't want these other body parts anymore. We can actually go ahead and delete those. So now we just have our knight head, which we'll rename knight standing. Okay, so now we can go ahead and create some new costumes for him. Let's have him wave his arms around a little bit. We'll duplicate his sprite and rotate it. And rotate it here. Always have to move a little before we rotate. All right, now we'll duplicate again. Duplicate the second one rather than the first one. And that way we can pick up from where we left off, and you'll know that you're always moving it a little bit forward here. So there we go. Now we'll create a third one. Down further. You can see how those extra parts we added to the arm are helping out now. Though in this case, not so much. There we go. And let's bring this one down a little bit too. It won't be perfect, but this will work okay. All right. Now, actually, let's just create one costume here that where he's moving his head around while he waves his arms around as well. So in our second frame of animation, we'll move his head a little bit to the right. We'll recenter it. And then this one, we'll move it a little bit to the left. And we'll recenter it. Make sure there's no gap. And for the last one, yeah, we'll just move it back to the middle again. Let's see what that looks like now. Let's code it. And green flag clicked forever. Next costume. Wait 0.1 seconds. Click the green flag. And look at our knight. He's looking pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. And you can do the same thing for his legs. We can create some new leg animations. Make sure to name these guys, right? So we can call this one standing 1, standing 2, standing 3. You want to know what you're doing when you're coding it, so you don't have to keep going back and looking at the costumes. Which one was costume 3 again? All right, so let's make some new leg costumes here. I'm going to start with the knight standing, my original one, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'll drag it to the bottom so that it's grouped up with all its friends, the ones that have to do with leg movement. And let's have him, well, actually we want him walking. There's different ways we could do it. Let's flip his leg horizontally so it's going like this now. And so now we could simulate a walking animation for him, right? So let's have him move his legs a little bit into something that looks a bit like a walking animation. Let's duplicate again. We'll send this leg forward. We'll bring this one back. And let's duplicate it again. We'll bring this one forward. This is a little bit weird because we're looking at this guy straight up, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to do walking with this guy. I'd have to play around with it a little bit to get a proper walk animation. So this is going to be kind of a cartoony walk, I think. If your guy's not facing sideways and his knees aren't bent, it's going to be hard for you to get legit walking out of this guy, but this should work okay. So that looks okay. So that third one, though, let's bring his legs back together again for that final one. Now it looks a little goofy, but this is a cartoonish kind of project here. So these are costumes 5, 6, and 7. Let's just try that. Instead of going next costume and waiting here, we're going to tell it to go switch costume to knight. I spelled standing wrong. So I've got him in costume 5. Now I'm going to right click to duplicate these 2 costumes, and I'll do that again and do that again with the delays, and we'll go 6 and 7. So now he's just going through the walking costumes. Let's see what our goofy walk looks like. Whoa! Looks a bit weird, right? But if we add a new command that makes him actually walk across the screen, let's try that. When green flag clicked, go to your start position, drag him across the screen and glide to that location. All right, let's check this out now. I'm just going to get rid of this other knight because he's in my way right now. Click the green flag, and there he is walking across the screen. Nice. Now he's doing this forever, which is a little bit silly. We would probably want to coordinate it so that he was only doing it a few times. Let's go make him repeat it 5 times. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And that's beautiful. Maybe 4 times. There we go. And so now our little knight is walking. It's pretty nice. There we go. So it's not perfect, guys, but it's fun, and it's definitely a lot better than the kind of costumes that you're going to have available. If you're working on something a little more obscure like ancient Egypt, you're not going to find ancient Egyptian graphics inside Scratch. So unless you want to use a cat and an owl or something to symbolize characters from ancient Greece, I'd rather use actual pictures of people from ancient Egypt or ancient Greece or wherever, or an atom or whatever, and actually animate them myself rather than making do with nothing. So the message here is you can bring graphics in from outside of Scratch, and you can even animate them with a little bit of Photoshop or pixeler knowledge. Some of these different variations are going to be a little bit more difficult, but as you get more confident with image editing, you'll be able to do this stuff like a pro. I'm going to save this finished project in the I will share it, and I will put an address to it in the description for this video if you want to call it up and have a look at my guy. And feel free to steal this animation and use it in your own Scratch projects if you want to. You can go ahead and drop this into a remix room. I'm going to create a remix room for this project called what's the name of our project again today? It's called Build a Sprite from Clipart. So I'm going to go Build a Sprite as the name of the remix room, and there'll be a link to that here and on my webpage as well. And so if you want to make a little story or do something with this and show me what you can do with this new graphic, great. If you want to share your own graphic that you've created, if you want to create a sprite for me out of Clipart, please go ahead and share the file in that remix room as well. If I see something fantastic, I will share it with my audience, and you can be a little famous. In the meantime, that was really fun, guys. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back next week. Hopefully I'll be ready to go with my RPG game next week. We're going to do a multi-part series on coding your own RPG game.